A room may shift before anybody speaks. A city may feel completely different after something monumental happens in it. You may dream of a figure that you have never met or ever even thought of before and wake up knowing exactly who that figure was and everything about them. You already know this feeling. You are aware of this feeling. You may watch a piece of content or a show or anything along the lines and feel something move and shift inside you that you're unable to locate in your own history or in any of your past memories. It's something beyond your memory, it's something heavier than your current mood. And what you may do is simply label it as an intuition or an atmosphere or coincidence. I'm here to tell you that it wasn't. It wasn't any of those things. Emile Durkheim was watching the French society collapse and fracture at the end of the 19th century, and he was trying to understand what held it together when it worked and what collapsed when it didn't. His answer was simply the collective consciousness, a body of shared belief, a body of shared value and shared moral intuition that exists above any individual member of society at all. No single person owns it and no single person ever decided upon it, but instead it accumulates over generations and now operates such as the weather would, inherently invisible and structural, and the condition inside which individuals' lives are lived, whether those individuals know that they're living or not. So when it does hold, when the structure is upheld, people know intuitively and societively what is expected of them. They share their reference points and they feel, without any necessity of being told, what is sacred and what is forbidden and what binds them to the people around them. When it dissolves, however, Durkheim called this anomie or anomie. I'm not very good at French, as you can tell, but I'd say it sounds like anomie, right? People lose their floor. They lose the baseline structure that they must build from. They don't lose their freedom per se, but instead they lose the floor. That is it. The invisible structures or form, maybe not formula, but instead the foundation which gives their choices weight and gives their lives a direction to follow. What follows after that is not liberation or freedom, but instead a specific and a modern vertigo that most people experience as a personal failure when instead it's a structural collapse. Look around, literally go look around outside, hop on a train, hop on a bus, go to a city center and look around and tell me that doesn't describe something that you recognize, something that you've felt in your life before when staring at other people living through their own lives, or even you've experienced in yourself. Another psychologist, one of the most profound, in my opinion, Carl Jung, went somewhere that Durkheim could not follow in any sense, as a matter of fact. Carl Jung was a psychiatrist. He spent so many decades sitting with people's dreams and their fears and their fantasies and their breakdowns, and kept finding the same thing about them. Across all those patients, across the hundreds and thousands of patients from so many different countries and different cultures and environments and histories, he found the same figures in their minds. He found the same symbols linking them together and the same stories surfacing in the minds that had never once been in contact or never even experienced the same thing that they could have contacted one another. It's the idea of the hero descending into the darkness, the shadow that follows you and shares your face to the world, and the great mother above. It is the trickster who breaks every single rule to reveal what the rules themselves were hiding, and these images, so-called, appeared in the dreams of a Swiss banker and then also in the myths of cultures that had never been heard of in Switzerland before. I think that's a bit unique, right? They appeared in medieval alchemy and also in the drawings of the children, and in any sense, they appeared absolutely everywhere and everywhere, like literally everywhere, always in every single era of human history. So Carl Jung then concluded that they were not a learned thing, but instead they were inherited. They were something that kind of came with you as you were born or as you grew your mind. They were structural features of the human psyche itself instead of something that you pick up along the way. They were present before you learned language, before you learned culture, and before absolutely anything that could be called its own personal experience or a unique thing. He called that layer that they lived in the collective unconscious, something beneath your personal history and beneath your individual memories and beneath anything that makes you specifically you. And It's something that Durkheim was unable to even name or label in a sense. He did call it the same thing, the collective unconscious, but it was something completely different to Durkheim's entire theory or persona, right? It's the whole point. The whole point behind it is that everything that makes you, specifically you as a person, anything that makes you unique or a human being, anything that encapsulates your humanity, is simply a shared inheritance with every other person on the planet. Everything is ancient, everything is pre verbal, and the accumulated experiences of every human being who ever lived compressed into patterns so fundamental that they were literally unable to be erased by time or geography or the location you were in or the environment you grew up in or even the complete absence between cultures, the connecting between cultures or contact between the two cultures. It was completely discernible. When something does move and you are unable to even realize why it's moved, something along the lines of a myth or an image or a piece of music or film or a story that you've never heard before, that feels like something you have always known, something that you really know that it's in the back of your mind your entire life. You are touching upon that collective consciousness. And it's not as if this is something inherently new or as if it's something that has to be named, but I think a lot of people conflate it with something that the internet created. The internet did not create anything along these lines, but instead, what the internet did was, I guess, emphasize it so much that it made it impossible to ignore. The contemporary internet or the modern day social media makes this illusion of that collective consciousness, right? Look at something going viral, not the things pushed by algorithms or celebrities or high budgets, but instead the ones that move through a population as if it's a current flowing through water. A video of a person dancing, or an image, or just a sentence or a quote that arrives, and something in millions, tens of millions of people simultaneously say yes and agree with it. Exactly that. They feel it in them. Nobody coordinated that video. Nobody coordinated it to reach tens and hundreds of millions of people. Nobody decided to engage with it, but instead the thing touched upon something that was so deeply rooted in their mind, already existing in them and already shared between them, even without realizing it. It was just waiting for a language to put it into words. For instance, look at the mood of a connected population shift in real time. The collective grief of a shared loss, or the collective outrage that arrives before anyone has actually processed what happened. You can look at so many different examples, but I'm not going to name any because this isn't a political video, this is a philosophical one. Just think about certain examples. Think about how, before anyone realized what had actually happened, everyone has already been enraged about it, or been upset about it, or grieved it, or been happy about it, right? It's also the same way that cultural movements feel less of an event or a moment, but instead feel more like passing weather, something that just goes through everyone at once. It's as if a cloud just flew through a crowd, or cloud and crowd, wait. But it's as if people, wow, I'm cold now. I felt that cold go through me, but then a minute later, since the cloud has passed, no one feels it anymore. This is Durkheim's collective consciousness running on newer infrastructure. This is Carl Jung's archetypes finding a new vessel to sail upon. And the underlying structure between the two is ancient, but the speed and the sharing and the emphasis is new. That is what makes it so contemporary and so harmful, as a matter of fact, nowadays. And the thing that's actually worth you sitting with and trying to understand in this sense is that just the thoughts you had this morning, or the feelings that you woke up with, or the values that feel self evident in any sort of way, or the fears that even feel personal, or the stories that move you. There's so many examples that I could bring upon. How much of that are yours, or how much of those examples are genuinely yours in the deepest sense? Carl Jung's answer to that was generous, but it was also a bit unsettling, right? You yourself are an individual. That is undebatable. You have uniqueness built into you because we are all human. Your specific history does matter, but the individual mind is not a sealed container. It breathes, it has holes to allow things in and out, to allow circulation. It absorbs and it sits inside of culture, inside of the species, inside of a history that has been going on for so long that most of it predates anything that you could even call human. The archetypes seem to move through you in any sense. The collective consciousness is what shapes you. The shared unconscious of your entire species, the entire humankind, humanity as a whole, is part of what you are thinking when you think that you are thinking. It's a little bit paradoxical in a sense, but it makes sense if you think about it. Well, I mean, to be fair, if you think about it, you're thinking, whatever, I'm talking now. Now, Durkheim would also add to Jung's theory, well, not in a chronological scale, but it would add to it in the sense that the more certainties or the moral certainties you carry, in the sense that you think your morals are beyond anyone else's, the things that feel obviously right or obviously wrong in your mind, the intuitions as well that you would stake yourself completely upon, the more of those that you add to your life, the more of those that you have and they coexist within your living, those are the collective consciousness of your particular culture, absorbed in a way so completely that they feel as if they are personal convictions, but they are simply rooted within your living. Which means that the question that is truly yours, the question that you could ask of everyone, but the collective consciousness would force them to answer it separately because it does not apply to this question, arrives at genuine reflection rather than a collective absorption. And I think that is one of the most serious questions available as a human. I think in a lot of my other videos, I end off with a question, just as Seneca would end off with a quote from Epicurus. I end off with a question that I recommend you sit with and journal by the end, but I think this one is one of the most important if you genuinely want to understand your mind. Because psychology is such an underrated topic, even though it's so talked about. People take psychology and then think that they're going to become a psychologist for one else. I think psychology, just as a topic to learn, is most important to sit with questions and answer them. Most people will never reach the question of enlightenment because most people will never realize that there is a difference between the water and the fish. You yourself are the fish. However, now you are aware about the water. So this time I'm not going to leave you with a question. This time I want you to enlighten yourself by researching on Durkheim and researching on Jung and just researching on the idea of this collective consciousness and figure out the question and then sit with it and answer it. Because the fish swims in the water, but the water doesn't swim in the fish. I don't fucking know, I'm just talking now.